This is Greg Helbeck, and on today's REI deal breakdown, I'm going to talk about a wholesale deal that we made $98,000 on in Orange County, New York. So if you are interested in learning how to do big, fat, juicy deals like that, this is the podcast to watch. So if you're not familiar with me, I have been a full-time entrepreneur now for almost a decade. I've done well over 250 properties, got a decent sized operation in the Northeast and in the Northwest. And the point of this video is to share real world practical advice that I've learned from my career as an entrepreneur, as a real estate investor. This is not regurgitated theory that's coming out of a book. This is all practical information that I've learned from the streets. So if you get value from this video or any other video, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the show on social media, and that is how we grow this thing on a consistent weekly basis. So today we're talking about a property we did on Bullville Road in Montgomery, New York. And the way that I found the property was through another wholesaler. So my buddy James Lee, who's a wholesaler in Monroe, he hit me up and he said, "Hey, I got a deal. I want to do the deal with you. Guy's motivated. He needs to sell. He hasn't paid his property taxes. He inherited the property." And I was like, "Cool, man. Let me know." And he's like, "Yeah, I actually got the guy to accept my offer." So the property was bought for $79,500. So long story short, James got the seller to basically take $80,000 for the property, which is crazy because the property is worth a lot more if it was fixed up. Why was the seller selling the house so cheap? Well, number one, they inherited the property and they did not know how to probate it. And number two, they haven't paid their property taxes in like 3 years and they were going to lose it to foreclosure. Number three, the property was in complete disrepair, needed a ton of work. And the owner wanted to get some money out of it before it went to the auction. So in New York, if you don't pay your taxes, I think for 2 or 3 years, it gets auctioned off or something like that. So anyway, he agreed to sell the property for $79,500. And I was like, yeah, that is a deal. As long as we can get the probate figured out, we can absolutely make money on this. So we got it under contract and I wholesaled it out to a buyer and put it up for sale for $177,500. And we gave the seller $78,000 and the ARV on this thing is probably like $350. So we got the thing at like a ridiculous price. Honestly seemed too good to be true. So we ended up getting it under contract and then we had to take it through probate. We had to hire an attorney out of our own pockets. I think we had to cut a check for like $3,500 for their retainer. And we paid the probate attorney and then they took the property to the court. They got it appointed to where the seller was the legal owner. It took like 4 or 5 months to do that. We got the letters of administration. And once the letters of administration became effective, the guy was the legal owner, we had to then get the property closed. And we ran into a little bit of a hurdle there because the owner didn't know where they were going to go. So this always happens when they're living in the house. They don't know where they're going to go. They don't understand that they have to leave the property and we can't give them the money until they get out. So it was a little bit of a wrestling match to get this guy to leave and basically needed the check first and couldn't close and give him the check until he left. So it was kind of like the sticky situation we're in. So what ended up happening was the buyer agreed to close. And then the second the owner got the money, he agreed he was going to leave. So we had to line the closing up to where the guy wasn't going to leave the house until he had the check in his hands, which makes sense, I guess. So the way the closing went down is the buyer sent the money. Then the seller got the check. And then once the seller got the check, the buyer went to the house immediately to make sure he was out, which he was. And the deal closed. And at the end of the day, we walked away with a $98,500 wholesale fee or something crazy like that. No, it was $98,000, which is insane, right? And normally wholesale deals aren't like that. Usually they're 30 grand, 20 grand, something like that. So how did we make 98 on this one? Well, number one, the obvious is that we bought the house super cheap. We got a great deal on it. And not every deal is like that. You're not going to make 100 grand on every wholesale deal, but if you do enough marketing and you make enough offers, you're going to run into deals like that. So you got to understand if you're in the game long enough, you're going to hit some home runs. You're going to have some base hits. You're going to strike out most of the time. But if you're taking enough swings to the plate, you're going to hit home runs. You're going to get crazy good deals. You're going to get, 100K wholesale deals, especially in New York where it's more expensive. But we got the property cheap. If we didn't get the property for basically 80,000, we obviously wouldn't have made the wholesale fee we made. The seller was super motivated. They understood that they needed to sell the house. They had no other choice. They couldn't list it. It was in terrible shape. They didn't know how to fix title issues. So someone's probably watching this and saying, "Greg, you got that thing way too cheap. The seller just got ripped off." No, that's not true. Because number one, the seller didn't know how to solve the problem. The seller was going to let the property go back to taxes and the seller would have gotten zero. So in this case, the seller got 80,000 minus the taxes. I think there was like 20,000 in taxes or something. So they ended up getting like 60,000. And they were going to get zero. So people think real estate investors, when they get really cheap deals, sometimes like the sellers get hosed. They don't get hosed because he made the choice in sound mind to sell the property at whatever price we offered them. And he was happy about it. So we didn't host the seller. Seller got $60,000 they would not have gotten if the tax auction took over. And at the same time, the seller didn't know how to get the title issue cleared. So we knew exactly how to get the probate opened. We knew who to hire. We paid for the attorney so the seller didn't have to absorb that expense. So at the end of the day, we were able to add a lot of value and solve a very big problem for this guy. Therefore, we made a very big profit. So if you solve a big problem for an owner, you're entitled to make a very big profit. As long as the owner's okay and they agree with the price and they're in sound mind, you can buy the house for whatever you can negotiate, right? They say life is all about negotiation. In this case, we knew it was going to be a lot of work. Bigger the problem you solve, the more money you usually make. Remember that. That's a writer downer. Lesson number two. Usually the big fat juicy deals have the most issues on them and they're going to take the longest to close. But when you get them closed, obviously it's worth it financially. So we knew this was going to take some time. We were able to go in and add more value to the seller. So here's actually the better lesson. When you're getting a really low price on the house, add a lot more value to the seller. So usually we don't pay for the probate. Usually we don't hire the attorney to do the probate. Usually the seller deals with that and we buy the house afterwards. But in this case, we knew the seller wasn't going to be able to do that. So we're like, okay, we're going to give you 80,000 and we're going to add all these other things to the offer. So you don't have to lift a finger. All you got to do is leave when the property is ready to close. So add more value to the seller and you can justify your lower offer. That's the second lesson. The third lesson here is that JV deals with other investors are one of the best ways you as a local established investor can get extra revenue into your business for zero cost. So this deal, I didn't market to myself. I didn't negotiate the offer. I got the deal once the offer was accepted and I was able to take my knowledge and my expertise of doing this business for 10 years and add value to James to be able to get this deal closed and get everything sorted out so we can both help the seller and sell the house and make some money. So if you're a new investor and you have complicated deals that are, hard to handle and you want an expert, find a local investor. If it's the Hudson Valley, call me. If it's somewhere else, then call whatever local investors in that area. And when you partner with investors who have a lot of experience, it's like an insurance policy to make sure your deals get closed. So hopefully you got value from this one. This was a big, fat, juicy deal. If you're in the Hudson Valley or Seattle or Delaware, or Reno or San Diego, you have a house you want to wholesale with me, just like this one. Send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com or Instagram DM me at grego37 and I'll see you on the next REI deal breakdown. Thanks.